Power scaling in anime can often be reckless, with broken abilities and hacks that make certain characters invincible, either within the frameworks of their anime or within fictional works in general. And in stories where powers don't do the trick, it's the cruelty of the human mind that manages to stun us. In some cases, certain villains possess both, having powers beyond comprehension and personalities that are extremely devoid of empathy. This brings us to villains in anime, who can be geniuses with unprecedented power levels. 100% dedicated to their twisted goal, these characters hate it when others get in their way. And while some are ready to destroy the world for these very goals, others destroy everything and everyone around them for personal pleasure. Hard to say which one is worse, although the requirement to cause suffering for pleasure can be harder for people to comprehend. And yet, these very traits tend to make some of the most antagonizing characters, who take the realms of their stories by storm, while simultaneously becoming some of the most influential characters in anime. Today's video is dedicated to 20 such characters, whose involvement has created some of the greatest rivalries and battles we have ever witnessed. Before getting into the content, we would like to make a very small request to our viewers. Please subscribe to our channel, like and comment on our videos, and press the bell icon to be notified whenever we upload new content. We would be grateful to you, and we hope to bring you the best nerdy content in the future. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Griffith Berserk. Starting off the list strong, we have the beautiful and gorgeous Griffith. Don't let his extraordinary good looks fool you though, because this man is the primary antagonist of one of the darkest mangas of all time. The founder of the Band of the Hawk, Griffith had created a better and more positive impression when he restored peace to Midland after the 100-Year War. Right off the bat, he was renowned for his charisma and tactical skills, earning the reputation of being invincible. He proved it once again when he defeated Guts, the protagonist, in a duel, under the bet that if the latter were to lose, he would have to join Griffith's mercenary armor, aka the Band of the Hawk. Although Guts' involvement with the Hawk earned the army great recognition, he eventually left the army to stop fighting for Griffith's dream of having his own kingdom. This sent his now best friend Griffith down the spiral of insanity, who eventually sacrificed the Hawk and Guts on the day of the eclipse to rise once again as the 5th member of the God Hand. Having believed he was far superior to the average person, which he was, Griffith's re-rise as Femto cemented this position. Although Griffith has always been an extremely skilled swordsman and an ace at unarmed combat, joining the God Hand allowed him to perform feats such as telekinesis, spatial and gravity manipulation, teleportation, and flight. Alongside that, he could also see the flow of causality and manipulate it to further his goals, warp reality, and attain supernatural charisma that easily charmed people and convinced them to join his cause. Meruem, Hunter x Hunter. Meruem is an antagonist who appears in possibly the best arc of Hunter x Hunter and one of the best arcs in anime ever. Before his birth, his mother, the Queen of the Ants, ensured that her offspring, who was destined to be king, would be stronger than anyone else before him. It started off as her eating other animals and then humans, giving rise to the Chimera Ants. But things really took a turn after these Chimera Ants hunted down people who had access to the powers of their Nen. After Meruem was born, he was ruthless, cold, and had powers that not only rivaled but outdid those of Chairman Neteros. His specialized Nen type allowed him to synthesize the Nen of the users he devoured to make it his own, in turn increasing his powers by a great margin. In fact, within the realm of Hunter x Hunter, his stats were so high that there simply weren't ratings for it. However, what made the Chimera Ant arc so great weren't the battles or Meruem's power, but rather his character arc. Having human characteristics and traits due to his mother's consumption of people, Meruem eventually turned more and more humane. This was aggravated by his interactions with a blind girl named Komugi, whom he could never defeat in a game of Gungi. Usually, it took him mere seconds to defeat his opponents in both physical battles and board games that required mental prowess. In a final showdown with the Taro, Meruem was able to survive all of the chairman's attacks, finally reaching the brink of death after the chairman triggered the chemo-explosive weapon of mass destruction known as the Poor Man's Rose as he died. Although Meruem was brought back by his underlings Yuppie and Poof, the king finally died hand in hand with Komugi after the deadly poison he had absorbed from the explosion damaged his internal organs for good. Frieza, Dragon Ball Z. It took one of the most formidable villains ever to trigger Goku into finally attaining his Super Saiyan form for the very first time. Appearing as one of the primary antagonists in Dragon Ball Z, Frieza was responsible for destroying planet Vegeta and the Saiyan race. And his feats did not stop there, as he had killed off most of the Namex as well. And why did he kill the Namex? Well, because they did not address Frieza with the right amount of respect. In fact, it was after he killed Krillin that an angered Goku finally became a Super Saiyan. Frieza was the Emperor of Universe 7, had his own imperialist army, and had relatives such as King Cold and Cooler who were formidable villains by themselves. Having attained the reputation of being Goku's greatest foe, Frieza has been a recurring character in the Dragon Ball series. With several transformations and forms that revolve around demonic concepts, Frieza's first three forms are not his base, but they actually conserve his enormous powers, making his fourth form his original. A being with a systematic approach, Frieza's brutality was amplified by his contrasting demeanor, which was less savage and more refined with his respectful and formal manner of speech. He showed off his mockery and dark humor while claiming his victims and reveled in his sociopathic nature. Unlike several villains in anime whom we can often empathize with, Frieza possesses unparalleled cruelty with a heart full of hatred, setting him apart from many other antagonists both in and out of anime. Madara Uchiha, Naruto. Often referred to as the one-man army, Madara Uchiha is one of the coolest villains to ever exist. So much so that viewers and readers of Naruto alike couldn't help but marvel at how great he was. A reincarnation of Indra Otsutsuki, Madara Uchiha wielded not just the infamous Dojutsu of the Uchiha clan, that is, the Sharingan, but he had also awakened his Mangekyo Sharingan. With the Mangekyo eventually taking away his vision, he implanted his brother Aizuna's Mangekyo in his own to attain the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, which did not have any drawbacks. One of the two founders of the Hidden Leaf Village, alongside Hashirama Senju, Madara Uchiha appeared once again in the war arc despite being dead, when the reanimation or Ito Tensei Jutsu was performed on some of the most lethal ninjas from the past. Within seconds, he took down an entire army all by himself and proved his prowess in front of all of the 5 Kages when he armored each of his 25 shadow clones with a Susanoo. Further into the story, he was able to get his hands on a Rinnegan and became the vessel for the 10-tailed beast, attaining powers that Naruto and Sasuke had great troubles keeping up with despite getting amps from the Sage of 6 Paths. Props to Might Guy for going all the way out and giving Madara a run for his money, albeit temporarily. However, it was Madara's personality that made him the warrior he was. In his zombified form, he could not enjoy battle as he did not feel pain from it. After he was brought back to life, he was less worried about losing it again, and rather excited about how he could feel the sensations of being in battle, be it the thrill from winning or the pain from taking hits. Although the man fought for his dream to create a world where everyone would be happy in their delusional dreams, he mostly fought because he enjoyed fighting. And let's not forget the time he turned Sasuke Uchiha into a selfie stick. Muzan Kibutsuji, Demon Slayer. Michael Jackson gone evil? Well, he did warn us he was bad. This sentiment is reinforced by his lookalike, the arch-antagonist of Demon Slayer, Muzan Kibutsuji. In a world where humans are threatened by demons as the latter has a taste for slaughtering the former, Muzan Kibutsuji is the only one who can turn a human into a demon. He's responsible for destroying Tanjiro's family and turning Nezuko into a demon. He's responsible for creating the upper moons and the lower moons of the demons. The lower moons are so afraid of him that they cower at his feet, and if he thinks they're useless, he takes them out instantly. If he thinks a demon is worthy, he makes them stronger by giving them some of his blood. The upper moons are so powerful that for the longest time, no Hashira has been able to defeat one. Rengoku lost his life in the line of battle, and Tengen lost his arm with Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke being ridiculously wounded, only to defeat the weakest of the upper moons. And they are this powerful because they have more of Muzan's blood than the others, showing us just how incomprehensible Muzan's powers truly are. But the thing that makes him even more frightening is how he is blended in with the human world where he acts as a family man with a wife and child. Light Yagami, Death Note. Death Note's Light Yagami is recognized as one of the greatest protagonists in shonen, and rightfully so. A huge contributor to that would be the blurred lines between him being the protagonist and the show's villain. The reason why we do not consider him to be an antagonist is because that role belongs to L, who earns this title not because he's the bad guy, but rather because he's the rival who acts as the opponent to Light Yagami. Light's story begins with him getting his hands on the Death Note, which he uses to kill criminals and, in a sense, purge the world of evil. rival. A genius from the get-go, he faces great opposition from L, a genius detective who stands against Light for a great chunk of the story. This rivalry results in Light getting more and more unhinged, for lack of a better word, as he becomes a cold-blooded killer to not blow his own cover. He also manipulates and takes advantage of Misa, who is obsessed with him, while Light could not care less about her, all because Misa has the Shinigami eyes which allow her to see the names and lifespans of others. As you can tell, Light becomes the very thing he hated, in his case, a criminal, and with something like the Death Note by his side, he was pretty much unstoppable. Father. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. The 2009 retelling of Full Metal Alchemist's story strays away from its 2003 counterpart as it sticks to the storyline of the manga it's based on, and with that, we get Father as a new villain to join the foray. The creator of the homunculi, and by extension, the country of Amestris, Father has had a long journey from being the dwarf in the flask to somewhat of a god. He never saw humans as the compassionate group of people they were. He scoffed at the human need to form communities and procreate, and his entire goal revolved around sacrificing these very humans for the bigger picture in his head. As someone who found his freedom by tricking the king and his own apprentice to sacrifice the entire civilization of Xerxes, Father tried to repeat the same tragedy as he created Amestris with its dummy government, all because he wanted the power of a god, if not more. To attain these disastrous goals, he had organized several wars and mass murders in key points of the country, because he had a nationwide transmutation circle created underneath Amestris. During his very first interaction with the Elric brothers, he even mentioned how, to him, humans were what ants were to other humans. So much so that in a one-sided conversation with his apprentice Hohenheim, he mentioned how humans were weak but useful only as a resource. If a person killed an ant, he would not fret over it at all. And that's how Father saw humankind. Sosuke Aizen. Bleach. One of the biggest villains from the anime Big Three, Sosuke Aizen from Bleach is a master planner and a schemer. He believed that there must be a supreme being at all times, and he put his plans into motion to attain that very title and rule from the heavens. He started to craft his plans several years before the birth of Ichigo Kurosaki, as he tried to break down the barriers between the Soul Reapers and the Hollows. In a society where the two were destined to fight one another at all times, Aizen helped the Soul Reapers gain the powers of the Hollows and vice versa, creating hybrids who had access to the ultimate powers. He went on to create a mystical sphere called the Hogyoku and arranged Ichigo's life events from the start, so that one day, Ichigo would steal a better Hogyoku created by Kisuke Urahara from Rukia's body. This also resulted in Ichigo, a human, attaining the powers of a Soul Reaper. Aizen was no stranger to dragging out a fight as he reveled in explaining his grand schemes and master plan in great detail. However, he masked this god complex by playing the role of a simpler man in front of others, and of course, several characters fell for it throughout the course of the story. There was also the fact that he did not want anyone else to become this very supreme being. It was a role that he believed could only be fulfilled by him. Ryomen Sukuna, Jujutsu Kaisen. Jujutsu Kaisen's Ryomen Sukuna is the only one with the power to rival Gojo Satoru, a Jujutsu sorcerer who has access to infinity as well as the 6 eyes, making him practically invincible. Also known as the King of Curses or the Disgraced One, he had been defeated 1,000 years ago before the events of the show by the combined efforts of all sorcerers. Although he used to be a human sorcerer, his death resulted in him becoming a cursed spirit, making his body too powerful to be destroyed. So his curse had been sealed into 20 indestructible fingers and preserved in grave wax. In the present, with the curses growing stronger due to an increase in human resentment, the Jujutsu sorcerers began to look for the fingers. Things weren't that easy, however, as high school Yuji Itadori consumed one of those fingers in a battle against one of the curses, as he wanted to prevent the curse from getting its hand on Sukuna's cursed finger. Due to mysterious reasons that have been revealed in the manga, Yuji's body was much stronger than that of the average person, allowing him to become a vessel to Sukuna instead of dying from the effect of the curse. As Yuji consumed more of these fingers to gain access to more of Sukuna, the Jujutsu Society planned to kill Yuji after he had consumed all 20 of them, to bring an end to the threat posed by Sukuna. However, unlike Kurama from Naruto, Sukuna is far more cooperative with Yuji, and even killed him once by ripping out his heart after demolishing Yuji's fellow sorcerer and friend, Megumi Fushiguro, in battle. In terms of abilities, Sukuna is a special grade cursed spirit with powers far beyond the ones possessed by other spirits of his tier. He has vast amounts of cursed energy alongside having enormous strength, speed, reflexes, durability, and the ability to regenerate. And the man has his priorities sorted as he wants to be reborn and rule over the world of humans with curses oppressing them in hierarchy. Marshall D. Teach, One Piece. For our final Big Three entry, we have Marshall D. Teach, or Blackbeard from One Piece. The captain of the Blackbeard Pirates, Teach is a cut above from the rest because he possesses the powers from two devil fruits, with one being the Gura Gura no Mi fruit and the other being the Yami Yami no Mi. The reason why this is such a big feat is because normally a person can only consume one devil fruit in their lifetime. Consuming another would cause their body to blow apart, leaving little to no trace. In Luffy's journey to become the Pirate King, he faced great opposition from Blackbeard, who was striving for the same title and would go to any lengths to acquire the One Piece. He was responsible for the death of Ace as well as Whitebeard. He was also the one responsible for the scars on Shanks' face. As a member of the D family, Blackbeard was dedicated to discovering the truth of the world and causing trouble for the world government. He has enormous physical strength, durability, and endurance with a super high pain tolerance. This is only made worse by his devil fruits because the Gura Gura no Mi allows him to tilt the land and the sea, which is not the best possible scenario for pirates. Meanwhile, the Yami Yami no Mi nullifies the power of other devil fruits. Yujiro Hanma, Baki the Grappler. The father of Baki and Jack Hanma, Yujiro Hanma is the primary antagonist of the Baki franchise as well as its strongest character yet. Due to his abilities, he is a highly paid assassin and mercenary, working for various organizations and governments due to his status as a freelancer. With arrogance running through his veins, Yujiro Hanma considers the act of mercy to be weak. He lives to fight, he lives to destroy, and he lives to get stronger with each fight. Naturally, he has no aversion to killing, even for trivial reasons such as personal pleasure, and he feels no remorse as he commits such heinous acts. Yujiro is also ruthless, which is seen from how he killed his lover Emi when he ruptured her eardrums and broke her spine. His narcissistic god complex has resulted in him thinking of himself as the planet's most vital living creature. In one instance, he even ripped another warrior's face off and slammed his skinless face to the ground. With his body as the ultimate weapon, Yujiro does not believe in using weapons or technology for his cause, simply because he doesn't need them. Needless to say, he has not been the greatest father figure to Baki, often emotionally manipulating his own son. Misogi Kumagawa, Medaka Box Abnormal. A comparatively less popular addition to this list of heavyweight anime villains, Medaka Box Abnormal's Misogi Kumagawa is yet a perfect fit because of his psychotic nature and ridiculous powers. Kumagawa's minus is a power so strong that it lets him negate any aspect of reality. This power of all fiction is so ridiculously broken that he himself has trouble controlling it properly in a way that will prevent long-term ramifications. His physiology is renowned for its tenacity that allows him to get back up no matter how battered down he is. The funny thing is, Kumagawa considers himself to be the weakest person in the world, but this only makes him an expert in combat. This is because he has a complete knowledge of all the weaknesses within the human body, allowing him to assess and locate his opponent's weaknesses with ease. He can even use his will to materialize objects onto his opponents, and these objects range from screws he throws with pinpoint accuracy to magical swords that can slay beasts. But it is all amplified by his ability to erase his aura, and with no one being able to feel his presence in battle, his attacks become much harder to avoid. Ryo Asuke, Devilman Crybaby. Ryo is probably the craziest villain out of all because he's not demonic, not devilish, not beastly. He's not Satan in human form, rather he's Satan himself. And for the longest time, he's played the role of Crybaby Akira Fudo's old harmless friend. What Fudo never knew was how his friend had been planning the demise of humanity for the longest time. Ryo was responsible for turning Akira into a Devilman, and by extension, putting the events of Devilman Crybaby into motion, which was a bloodfest to say the least. The show is definitely not for the faint-hearted, as there is way too much violence, blood, and gore in almost every episode. Later into the story, his farce of being a young man fails as he finds out he himself is Satan and actually managed to attain his goal. With evil being his entire personality, no one would expect him to feel guilty over his actions, and he didn't, until Akira himself had died alongside every other human. The one Ryo had used as his pawn all this while lay dead beside him, which finally sparked an unusual reaction within Satan, who seemed to break down over the death of his one friend. Dio Brando, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. A rival to Jonathan Joestar, Dio Brando found his way into the Joestar mansion following the passing of his far-from-ideal father. From the get-go, the two resented one another, with Dio attempting everything possible under the sky to ruin Jonathan's life. But after Jonathan thwarted his machinations and defeated him in battle, Dio gave up his humanity and turned into a vampire, thus becoming the immortal, cunning, and malevolent person he is now popular as. He went on to commit acts of monstrosity as someone who was obsessed with hurting Jonathan, showing how twisted he really was. But eventually, he came to respect his rival, who died in his arms while Dio held him in shock. This led to Dio taking Jonathan's body for himself and finally awakening his stand, the world, and becoming one of the strongest characters in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. A heartless maniac who is dedicated to becoming richer and more powerful than anyone and everyone, Dio finds himself standing against the Joestars once again, prompting him to send goons against them. But ultimately, he's crushed by Jotaro, who has the help of his Star Platinum, which in turn makes Jotaro's stand one of the strongest in the series. But the damage has already been done, as Dio's manipulative machinations have led to countless deaths that continue to haunt the Joestar family. Vicious Cowboy Bebop. Although Cowboy Bebop is episodic as a series, unlike most of the standard anime that follows a linear storyline, some of its characters are recurring and have a consistent story. One such character would be Vicious, the enemy of Spike Spiegel and a member of the Red Dragon Crime Syndicate. Previously, he used to be peers with Spike, who used to be a part of the syndicate as well. Around this time, Vicious also developed a relationship with Julia, whom we now know is Spike's lover. Although Vicious and Spike rose up the ranks within the syndicate together, the latter eventually deserted the organization and tried to take Julia with him. Girl problems led to the two beginning to hate each other, thus birthing a blood feud. One of his most heinous acts would be killing Mao, the one who had taken him and Spike under his wing, proving just how sadistic and, well, vicious Vicious really was. He has no moral code and will do anything, no matter how ruthless, to get what he wants. Sacrificing others for power is definitely not something he's a stranger to, and although Spike shares a similar cynical outlook on life with an indifferent attitude as the two characters continue to live in their past, Vicious is the yin to Spike's yang. He tried to ruin Spike's life several times and was ultimately killed by his former friend turned enemy, after which Spike went out with a very literal bang. Gilgamesh Fate series. Never one to go down without a fight, the cocky Gilgamesh is the recurring main antagonist in the Fate series. Extremely powerful with his ability to call upon any weapon in his Gate of Babylon, Gilgamesh has acted as a terrible adversary in the Holy Grail War. Using the Sword of Rapture, Gilgamesh has the power to shatter reality marble, proving that his opponents stand no chance against him. With his goal of deciding who is worthy of being in his new world, people are terrified to oppose the half-human, half-god King of Heroes. He's the one the myths and stories of heroes within mankind are based on, but no, this does not mean he's the king of heroes. Rather, it stands for the fact that Gilgamesh is the king over all heroes. King Bradley, Fullmetal Alchemist. Despite not being the primary antagonist in Fullmetal Alchemist, King Bradley has acted as a formidable villain in both the 2003 and the 2009 animes, although he played slightly different roles in the two. One of the 7 homunculi, Bradley is the Führer of Amestris. In the 2003 series, he was known as Pride, while that title went to his son in the 2009 series and the manga. Meanwhile, Bradley acted as the homunculus Wrath and possessed the ultimate eye alongside extraordinary swordsmanship that was 100% unrivaled. His role was more important in the 2009 series, where he ruled over an Amestris that had been created for the sole purpose of aiding Father's ultimate plan of attaining godhood. He stoked the fires of several wars throughout the course of the show, most prominently the Ishval Civil War that was opposed by many of the state alchemists. Unfortunately, they could never go against the Führer's orders, always having to play into his hands and, by extension, fueling the plans of Father, who had King Bradley's help in his quest to create a massive Philosopher's Stone by sacrificing the people of Amestris. Anti-Spiral, Gurren Lagann. The physical manifestation, as well as the leader of the anti-spiral consciousness, this race had sealed themselves to purge themselves of the spiral power in the story of Gurren Lagann. Anti-Spiral is also the arch-enemy of Lord Genome, and is responsible for their madness. With their advanced technology came their godlike powers that allowed them to bend the laws of physics with ease, so much so that they could alter probability and manipulate quantum mechanics. They could project tendrils from their body to impale enemies, trap sentient beings in a dimensional maze of parallel universes, and drain spiral energy from all nearby life forms, thus converting them into anti-spiral energy. They could also summon constructs such as the Grand Zaboma, Ashtanga, and the Mugan. Within their very own dimension, the anti-spiral race was nigh omnipotent. Johann Liebert, Monster. The titular monster and the antagonist of the show, Johann Liebert is an extremely intelligent and charismatic individual. He had been shot in the head back in 1986, where Dr. Kenzo Tenma had the choice between saving the helpless boy and the mayor. Dissatisfied by the political biases in the hospital, Dr. Tenma had decided to put the mayor's life on the back burner to operate on Johann first, thus saving his life. This went on to become his worst mistake, as not only did Dr. Tenma lose his reputation, but the very boy he saved eventually became his worst nightmare when he turned into a dangerous psychopath. Johann grew up to use his charisma to manipulate and corrupt others, and he had no cause for doing so. Instead, he found pleasure in being cruel and bringing others to their destruction. He wanted to be the last one standing at the end of the world as the monster inside him kept on growing larger and larger. From his childhood, Johann formed schemes and committed calculated murders. He saw no meaning in life, and although a nihilistic approach was not what made him so cruel, it was his absolute lack of empathy and excess of psychopathic tendencies that made him revel in the loss of others. He preferred to see people suffer rather than die, and he preferred to be the one who led them to their sufferings, ultimately provoking his victims to take their own lives. All for One, My Hero Academia. And finally, we have All for One from My Hero Academia, a man who wants to use his power to destroy the future of humanity. In a world where the average person is born with a quirk or an unusual superpower, a society of heroes and villains has been established. However, most people had only one quirk, which was not enough for All for One. The very ability of All for One allowed him to stockpile several powers at once, just like One for All, which was wielded by All for One's brother, Shigaraki Tomura's grandmother, All Might, and protagonist Izuku Midoriya, among a few others. All for One went on to form the League of Villains and corrupted Shigaraki Tomura to turn him into his successor and a vessel for All for One's powers, as well as One for All. And throughout everything, All Might wanted to use Tomura as his puppet. In the story, All for One has been hell-bent on obtaining One for All, bringing Midoriya under his radar. Although he was defeated by All Might twice before, All for One eventually managed to escape and put his plans into motion once again, acting with zero remorse and exploiting people left and right for his selfish goals. Marvelous verdict! And this brings our list of conniving, manipulative, powerful, and remorseless villains to an end. Not to say they're all evil, considering how characters like Madara Uchiha and Meruem cannot be categorized under that umbrella. Yet, it's safe to say that every entry in this list is a nightmare to stand against, to the point that Light Yagami, a high schooler with no superpowers, can kill the likes of Goku and Saitama by simply writing their names in his notebook. Too bad he turned his personal Shinigami Ryuk against him. With that, today's video comes to an end. What did you think of this list of villains? Did you enjoy the video? If so, then don't forget to like and leave a comment down below. Until the next one, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.